How can we make sense of EEAT and all of the recent Google updates?
Because again, it kind of then satisfies what they're looking for on should this site be here? Is this a site that people can go to? Can they get their information? Can they ask questions? Is somebody responsible for this? Are they responsive? Google doesn't look at your website. Google doesn't get to your site and be like, I am a better person for having read this information. Like that's not what happens in the process. And so all of these signals are things that a bot needs to be able to find.
Well, we're joined by a returning guest, backed by popular demand, to help us uncover the changes we can make to keep our websites safe.
Sites that are growing, that are obtaining more and more keywords are healthy sites. That's an indicator that you're doing things very well, and Google likes you. Where I would start to be concerned is when that plateaus and starts to dip. That you do need to get those mentions on the web. You do need to be in those third-party sites. Make yourself a brand. Make it so that there is a conversion that can happen on your site. And I think the more of that you can do, the more trust you're going to build, and the more likely you are to not just survive, but then thrive.
Welcome to an exclusive Niche Pursuits podcast interview with Kyle Roof, co-founder of High Voltage SEO, Page Optimizer Pro, Internet Marketing Gold, and more. Enjoy.
Hey everyone, Spencer here, founder of Niche Pursuits. So you probably know the importance of building internal links so your site can perform well in Google. Today I want to share how Link Whisper can help you add outbound internal links to your articles. As you draft your article in WordPress, Link Whisper scans your site, identifying the best internal link opportunities. It then recommends the perfect anchor text and link to add. With just a click, your content is updated with new internal links. No more expensive tools or tedious manual site searches. Link Whisper does the heavy lifting right inside the WordPress editor. Say goodbye to the hassle of internal linking. With Link Whisper, you can focus on what you do best, creating great content. Use the coupon code PODCAST today and get $15 off. Elevate your website's internal linking with Link Whisper now. Building smart internal links just got easier. Go to linkwhisper.com today and be sure to use coupon code PODCAST to get $15 off.
Welcome back to the Niche Pursuits podcast. My name is Jared Bauman, and today we are joined by Kyle Roof. Kyle, welcome back on.
So happy to. You know what? This might be my favorite podcast. We've
Well,
done it. Is this our third one? Is this our third one?
We joked last
Second?
time about how many you've been on, and we were at like 3 or 4.
Yeah.
And I didn't go back and check. I always say I'm going to go back and check. We joked about how we need to get you like a nice jacket last time. I mean, now we're up to like naming a building after you or something.
I like that. Or like an official like chair, like the podcast YouTube show chair.
Again, I haven't checked, but you got to be the longest running guest now officially. It's the unofficial officially.
I'm proud of both of us.
Hey, we found more to talk about. It has been over a year, just over a year. And the podcast episode you did about a year ago, as per usual, was one of our most popular ones of the year. We were talking serendipitously about EAT. And simultaneously, as we released that podcast, Google announced the 4th letter to the acronym. It was almost a week or two later, but the podcast was so excellent that it still stood up on its own. But that was a year ago. We've got more to talk about. A lot's happened in the world of SEO in 2023 and as we enter into 2024.
Yeah, let's do it.
So again, I always have to ask this, but just give us like a 60-second overview on yourself. I will link in the show notes to previous episodes. And for anybody who's been living under a rock and isn't familiar with you and what you do, just catch us up really quickly, and then we'll dive into some of the topics today.
Sure. I'm the co-founder of a multinational agency called High Voltage SEO. I think when we spoke, we had offices in Phoenix, Berlin, and Melbourne, and now there's an office in Jamaica. We are slowly but surely expanding our global domination. We're taking things over globally. I'm the co-creator and inventor of Page Optimizer Pro, which is an on-page SEO tool. And I am the co-founder of IMG Courses. It's a place where we help you learn SEO. My courses are there. And we also test Google's algorithm, and the tests that I run on the algorithm I post there as well.
So last time you were on, we talked all about EAT, which was expertise, authoritativeness, and trustworthiness. I think let's dive into today's episode by expanding on what you offered with the new E, the experience factor. And I don't want to cut too quickly to the chase, but you really outlined a very, I'll just say almost like a playbook for the things that you need to do at a bare minimum to kind of check boxes as it relates to EAT. I'm over summarizing and probably putting words in your mouth to some degree, but in many ways, I'd love if we could pick up where that was. Give us, again, just a really high level over why the experience component you think got added and how it plays in with EAT, and then we can get into the details of experience.
Well, like a very quick, I think, recap would be what we talked about on the expertise was really, is this a real person?
Mm-hmm.
Is there a real person here that has expertise? Um, we talked about the signals that you can give, because keep in mind, and this is a very, I think, important point. Google doesn't look at your website. Google doesn't get to your site and be like, I am a better person for having read this information. Like that's not what happens in the process. And so all of these signals are things that a bot needs to be able to find. And because they can't look at the website and be like, oh, this looks legit, because that's just not how it's done. And so these signals are these things that you want to project have to be in a way that a bot would be able to understand them. And so as much as you can do to show that a human has written this information is the idea on the expertise. It's not that you have a particular expertise. It isn't a value judgment game where what's better, a degree from Stanford or a degree from MIT. Who knows? Google doesn't know. Or what's better,
Yeah.
Having more experience that we talked about, having 20 years of
Mm-hmm.
experience. What's better than is that better than somebody's got a degree of 4 years and just got out? That's not. It's not really a value judgment that Google is doing, but it's establishing, I think, that a real person has written this content. When you get to authority or authoritativeness, that's where you're looking at, I think, are you the go-to website? Are you the go-to place for information? And that's really getting into ideas of topical coverage. Have you covered the topic fully so that if somebody has a particular question, can they get more than that information there? Can they get the question answered fully? Because it's usually not one web page that'll solve, your problems or provide a complete
Right.
answer on something, but that as they go through the site, that the answer is there. And then the last one, trustworthiness, is really responsibility. Who is responsible for this website, and who is responsible for this content? If somebody has an issue, if somebody has a question, if somebody has a problem, who can they talk to? Who can they get redress from? And so those were kind of, I think, some of the big things we talked about, and then signals that you can help give a bot to help them find that those things are there. That you are a real person, that you do take ownership and responsibility. That you're present. That those types of things. So that's kind of what we got into the last time, and then it was pretty hilarious. I think it was 2 weeks after that they
It really was.
released the new quality rater guidelines and added an extra E. So now it's
My heart sunk a bit,
EEAT.
but
It was pretty
I
funny.
mean, it was pretty funny, you got to admit.
Like instantly almost going uh, uh, out of fashion with you. But all of that, it's kind of like all of that stayed basically the same. There were two big changes with that update. The one was adding the extra E for experience. And what's interesting is when you read the guidelines, it's really gray as the difference between experience and expertise.
Right.
And in typical Google fashion, that grayness is kind of like a charcoal gray. Um, like what does this mean exactly? I think you can probably think of expertise as a degree and experience as time. Would be kind of, I think, the two differentiators between the two things. But then how do you express time? And I really think what we talked about with the expertise part covers the experience part as well. Is this a real person? Have they done this? Have they been there and all that? And I think really that's kind of the main focus. There's been some speculation as to what else you might do, and I don't have anything hard or like, yeah, this is it. But a lot of people have been using terms where they discuss things in personal experience.
Mm-hmm.
I did this. I tried this thing out. I used it this long. I have been doing these things. So like talking from a perspective of experience. they have been involved in this thing. They have tried it out. If you're talking about a product, when I used this product, that type of thing. And so using that type of experiential language is something that people have turned to. Again, I don't know. I haven't seen amazing results doing that, or somebody conclusively saying that's the thing, but that is something that people are leaning towards. And when you think about Google looking at a page kind of like as a bag of words, they're all kind of in there, and you've got contextual terms that help Google understand what it's about. You could see those personalized terms could be something that they could be looking for. Again, a bot will be looking at this, not a human. The other huge change, though. Oh, I'm sorry. I think I cut you off.
No. I was going to ask you about the other change as it
Yeah.
related to that. So go ahead.
The other huge change was they basically kind of said, who cares about the EE or the A? It's all about the T. It's all about the trust part. And they actually have a new diagram where they've got 3 circles that have the E, and the A, and then there's a bigger circle overlapping with the T for
Mm-hmm.
trust. Basically saying if you don't meet the threshold for trust, the other things don't matter at all. And that really the trust part is the part that is the main focus now going forward. And that's really what you need to clue in on to kind of pass these EAT type checks. And the trust is really what they're in on.
You were saying on the podcast last time that you thought that authority was probably I don't want to mince your words, but that the expertise and the trust were the 2 more tangible ones, and perhaps more important, that authority was a little more about how well your site is performing. You talked about, hey, ranking for keywords, covering the topic. How will you know if you have authority? Well, because you rank for more keywords. It's important to rank to get authority, and those things come on the back of doing all the other things well. Now you're saying it's gotten switched a little bit to maybe trust being more important. If you had to kind of score these, or at least give people like a way to evaluate what to put a priority on, is it trust, experience, and then the other 2, or does it kind of change
I
a
would
bit now
probably
with the
go
new experience?
I'd probably go like trust and then the authority. Bigger sites do better. Bigger sites seem to get more grace, and bigger sites are ranking for more keywords. And so authority is I think maybe above establishing the things that say that this is a human. Um, they have these qualifications. They've done these things. So that's a little bit harder, I think, to get into, because also you can fake humans rather easily. You can't fake your rankings. They're there or not. And so I can see how that would be extremely important. And then the idea of trust. Trust it is very tangible, because it's like, who is responsible for this website? So there you're getting into, you know, is there a company behind this? Are there people behind this? And that's easily identified, like in your organization schema, for example. Or is this a website that actually has just good website features? Is it 404s everywhere, broken links? Does it load incredibly slow? Like, basically nobody's taking care of this. They're not really taking responsibility for the website and doing the things that a website should do. Are there a lot of de-indexed pages? Are there, do they have a lot of errors in Search Console, for example? You can see how that would factor into, okay, this is not a website that anybody is taking responsibility for, and there's really no point to have it in the index in the first place. As kind of a defining goal. Like, they start giving those rankings. Okay, this is getting authority. Should it be here in the first place? It seems like that's kind of the step that things go. There's probably a threshold for traffic of some measure, and then once they say, okay, you're hitting this thing, now we need to really evaluate, should you be here? And so at that point, that would, I think, trigger a lot of these types of checks. And then things they're going to look at are, is there somebody responsible for this site, and can we identify that easily? And is this a site that's worth anything? Should this be here in the service, because people will have a good experience when they get there.
So let's dive into experience, as it is the new one that we haven't really covered in depth in the podcast. And again, if you missed last year's interview, Kyle went through this stuff with a razor sharp knife and just went through each of these very, very practically. So a lot of practical tips, and we kind of ping pong back and forth. Do you need a Google Business Profile? Do you need an address? Do you so all those questions were asked, and that's why I'm not asking them right now. So go back and listen to that one if you're wondering why I'm not asking some of those. But with experience, I didn't have a chance to ask that. So let's talk about experience. I mean, you touched on a few of them already that are on my list to ask you about: first person language, referencing in an author bio your experience on the page, actually highlighting and showcasing by linking out to places that you've been mentioned, awards you've been given, areas that you've been quoted. What are things that are a little bit less fantasy, a little bit less, fantasy, and a little bit more practical in terms of what we can do to show experience?
So I do think, and there is a blurring between these as to what would help this or that. But one thing that I've always kind of clued in on is UGC. Um, Google talks about how much they like that. So user generated content. And that often comes in the form of comments or forum posts, kind of a thing. And if somebody has experience, if they have expertise, if they have all those things, you will ask them questions. People come to my website and they ask questions. I think that establishes that I am at least somewhat trustworthy, or people want to know. They want to know more information, so you can see the value of UGC as something that would establish, okay, this person has the experience that they're talking about, because now people are asking them questions. Um, and when you see like the helpful content update that's happened, and we might talk about this a little bit more, the sites that are winning, that are that have really moved in are Reddit and Quora, and that those are all UGC. Somebody asks a question, and then somebody gives an answer, and then a discussion happens, kind of independent even of the original post or the original thing that was there by a lot of different people. And what you can see when that happens is that you get a lot of different opinions as well. And you get a lot of information that allows you to evaluate information quickly. It also helps you evaluate if the original post or the person that made the claim or whatever they're talking about really, if the people that are there have accepted that. If they say that, yeah, that's a good thing or not. It's a way, when we talk about the Google doesn't do value judgment, humans do. And they do it through comments and they do it through threads. And you can see where that would allow the person who is absorbing the information then to look at the thread and see what other questions people have, if they're answered appropriately. If the discussion seems to be positive about what this person has presented, it's a way to kind of validate the experience of the person, or their expertise, even as it's a little bit gray, but done through UGC. And so I can see if all those things you mentioned, I would still totally do. I don't know how far Google is going to go off of a web page to verify anything, if at all. I think
Mhm.
they would see the existence of those links or of those things, and that would be enough to kind of tick that box. But then I think a way to really demonstrate that you have this experience that people are interested in would be through UGC. They're now asking you questions about what you've talked about.
And this is on your page, right? So comments
Correct.
open on your page. You wrote an article about something that you have experience in, and you're using all the right language to show Google you have the experience in it. You're even pointing to a link or two that says you have experience in it, but perhaps opening comments up, engaging in comments, and showcasing it back and forth highlights that people are actually interested in your experience on it.
Right. It validates what you've done. It also then gives anybody who goes and reads that information later also a thread to review to see, do other people think this is valid? Are other people in line with this? And so even if it's the wrong information, because Google can't really determine if information is right or wrong. It only what satisfies what its algorithm is looking for. But you can actually then kind of fact check, proof check. Any kind of check can be done through comments after that. And I can see that's why a Quora or a Reddit, I think, have gotten preference after this most recent update, the last several updates. I would mention, don't just turn them on. You're going to get spam to hell. So like, don't just turn them, like, moderate them. But if a question comes in, that's something that you can approve, and then you can answer also in a term-rich way. So you're getting your term counts up on the page. You could tweak things so that every time you respond, the page gets a new freshness date, a new modified date, to show that this is fresh content that people are engaging with, um, that this is something that is relevant. So you could be talking about something, a product from last year. I think Google will have to decide, is this being updated, or is this something that should show? And having those comments is one way to do it. That this conversation is still happening.
It reminds me a bit of what we're encouraged to do in with our Google Business Profile. We're encouraged to get reviews, right? It's better when people are reviewing. And then what do they want us to do? They actually want us as owners to reply to the review, to show engagement
Yep.
with the person and show their interaction with the person, even if it's like,
Yep.
hey, thanks a lot, appreciate it. That's about all you can usually
Right.
say with a review, but they still want that engagement to happen.
Yeah, and you can do that on your site. And I think sites that can engage in that, and obviously that's time consuming and it's not easy, it's resource intensive, but those are the sites they're looking for that can do those types of things. Because again, it kind of then satisfies what they're looking for on, should this site be here? Is this a site that people can go to? Can they get their information? Can they ask questions? Is somebody responsible for this? Are they responsive? And you can really see a lot of that through something like a UGC feature.
Um, do we flip the script and start engaging on UGC platforms like Reddit and Quora in an effort to help build a better footprint of experience for ourselves? And yes, if you're wondering, I'll tease it. We're going to get into the HCU. We are, I promise. So we're trying to kind of
Um,
stay on the EEAT topic without totally going into HCU, but we will get all into HCU if you're wondering. So, but yeah, obviously that is an HCU related question. But just from the idea of experience, do we want to engage in, say, starting some subreddits or participating in Reddits and et cetera, et cetera?
well, I think for the existence of it, I don't think it's going to do much to help your site. But one other aspect of EAT is links. That is something that is certainly a part of it. I don't think we touched on that too much. It's something I've thought about more about since that the talk that we had, and I can certainly see that there would be an aspect to links that would be valuable. And the question is, what type of links are those? Because they couldn't just be all links. They couldn't be domain authority. Sites with domain authority get hit by EAT stuff all the time. But I can really see value in things like citations, uh, which confirm your business identity, uh, branded Web 2.0s, which again confirm what kind of business you are. But then you can see links from social media, that potentially bring traffic in. So links on places like Facebook and Twitter and Quora and Reddit. I think establishing those links coming in, meaning that you are out in the universe, and you're talking about these things, and there are
Mm-hmm.
links then coming from these types of sites in. And so, while I think just posting on there might not be something where Google's going to go from your site and then check it, I think something that can be very beneficial for EAT would be that existence there, and there's a link and then it's coming back too. And so, any kind of things you could do, and even maybe getting into parasite SEO, which is a good way maybe to alleviate some of the issues with HCU, but
Yeah.
also on links on third-party sites that are trusted, ones that are showing up within search results or they're showing up in the knowledge graph. It's like review sites or other places for you to check information. If you're there and present and there are links coming in from those, I can see high value in doing that.
Speaking of citations, speaking of the knowledge graph, there's been a lot of people talking about, we'll call it entity building, as a better way to create a digital footprint of experience in Google's mind. Perhaps the scenario here would be getting mentions, whether it's on a business level or on a personal level, on sites that Google has been known to trust. Not in a classic backlink environment. That's more of an online mention, but more in terms
Right.
of creating profiles, creating, we'll just call it like citations, mentions
Yeah.
on these kind of trusted platforms. Maybe a Crunchbase would come to mind for your business. These sorts of platforms, how important or how relevant do you think that is in gaining experience? And perhaps that swings into the expertise conversation too.
I don't mean to toot my own horn, but when I launched my on-page course in 2019, there was a whole section on this, and I think it was valuable then, and I think it's very valuable now. That you do need to get those mentions on the web. You do need to be in those third-party sites, and sometimes you get a backlink out of it, which I think is great, and other times it does get into those mentions. It's hard to quantify a brand mention or a personal mention, and how many do you need, or how many can you get, or does Google even really look at these? Not really sure, but you do see how when those things seem to happen, how you do seem to do better. And it's probably it could also be a byproduct of other work that's happening, but it does seem to go hand in hand with sites that are doing well, sites that can pass these types of checks, sites that have excelled, all have those things, and they have them because they are present outside of their site, and they're present on those platforms, and they're posting, and they're being involved, and they're answering questions, and so there is it could just be kind of a byproduct of that, and that's why you see all those mentions, but they're there because they are out there and people are
Yeah.
talking about them, and they are also being involved in that conversation.
It feels like, not to overly summarize, but maybe to kind of move towards a conclusion here. It feels like experience is a lot more nebulous than
Yeah,
some of the other ones we talked about. I mean, I remember with trust, you were like, "Hey, have a privacy policy page."
yeah,
Hey, with expertise, hey, make sure you have author bios, and like it felt a lot more, I guess, tangible in terms of what we needed to
yeah.
create. And with experience, it seems like there's a lot of like it's a collection of a lot of factors. So let's try to do as many of these factors for as long of a period of time as we can. And collectively, we will kind of check this box. Is that accurate or is that a little bit too simplified?
No, no, you hit the nail on the head. And it is a murky thing. As I said, when you read the guidelines, it's charcoal gray. like like what are we talking about? It honestly says like a person with experience has experience. And it's like, well,
Oh God, are you serious?
yeah, it's that's a paraphrase, but it's not too far off. It's like good, great. Yes.
It's like that
I will
professor we
now
all
I
had
will
who,
now go get experience.
yes, yeah. It's like that professor we all had who would answer your question with another question, and you're like,
Yeah.
this is not what I came here for.
No, I came here for an answer actually. I wanted to learn what
uh,
this was.
okay.
So because it's like that, we have to kind of make some guesses, some best guesses and some best practices. What's interesting though is the best practice on all this is make yourself real. Make yourself as real as you can. That's the biggest thing. Think about the brick and mortar building of what you're doing. What do they have? There's probably something online that's similar or something that you can do online. That's kind of, I think, if you think in that mindset, like what makes me look more real, what makes me look more like an actual physical business online, the more you can do of that, the better. And I think if you put that framework on your mindset, I think you'll get some good direction as to what can we do.
Before we jump into the podcast, I wanted to let you know that today's episode is sponsored by Search Intelligence. Here's a short clip of Ferry from Search Intelligence showing you how their agency built digital PR links to a client's website.
This is how we landed massive links for our client in The Sun, a DR90 website, and many other UK news websites. We have used freely available data from YouGov to simply find out what the nation's favorite car brand is and which brands people love the most. Of course, Rolls-Royce came out on top, Aston Martin second, and Jaguar third. We put these insights in a short email and sent it to journalists that write about cars and to national news desks on behalf of our client. Within a few days, our client got featured in all the Suns, as well as many regional newspaper sites in the UK, gaining DR90 links to their leasing comparison website. YouGov website is full of unlimited PR stories with data already available for free. All you have to do is to start researching their data and start asking the data questions. You will be surprised of the unlimited PR campaigns that you will find there that can help you build massive exposure and links to your or your clients' websites. I hope this video is helpful and inspirational. If you want similar link building PR campaigns for your website, head to search-intelligence.co.uk and get in touch with them now. Well, let me segue into the HCU with this. We've been talking about the experience, and the extra E got added towards the end of 2022. I believe it was December 2022, maybe first week of January 2023, right?
Yeah.
So, and then, about 9 months later, we had the helpful content update, and Google told us when they added the experience that they really wanted all of us to have experience. And then ironically, 9 months later, a significant number of websites lost traffic for UGC content, user-generated content, where it was experience focused, and also lost a lot of traffic to businesses. Tangible businesses were starting to rank higher than a lot of, say, content websites and affiliate sites. And a lot of people surmised, well, because a plumber running a plumbing business might not have a very well optimized website, but that's because they're out plumbing and they're ranking higher than you because they're a plumber that plumbs, and your plumbing website that's very well optimized isn't. So maybe let's wade ourselves into the HCU with kind of that precursor. Like, does so much of this come on the back of the experience acronym that got introduced 9 months earlier?
I think personally, it's actually more on the trust side.
Okay.
I think that's actually where it comes in, because as you mentioned, the sites that seemed to get through were brands, and then there are also e-commerce sites where you can complete the transaction on the site. That's actually the biggest thing. The sites where you can get your information and complete what you need to do right then and there, versus most affiliate sites where in order to complete the transaction, you have to click and go to another site. And you can see then, I can see how that falls under the trust aspect of things, that if there's a problem with the purchase, the user cannot go back to the place where they originally got sold. They read this content, okay, this is what I need, this is what I like, and then they go to another site to finish the transaction there. If there's a problem with the transaction, they can't go back to that original person that sold them.
Yeah, it says
You know,
Amazon.com on their invoice, not yeah, so and
Exactly.
so's website.com.
Exactly right. So the sites that made it through were brands where you finish, or companies where you finish the transaction right there. You call the plumber, and that's it. That's the end of the transaction in terms of
Mhm.
the online part, and then you get your plumbing services done, right? Or e-commerce stores where they then ship you the thing, and then from there, if there's a problem, you need to do a return, you do it through the site. And so I can see where this is still, as they mentioned with the addition of the extra E, they also said, by the way, trust is the most important part of all of
Yep.
this.
Yep.
And I can see where then those are the sites that they trust the most, the sites that are taking responsibility for the thing that they're selling. And that's where I think um, the affiliate sites that have been just pummeled by Google for the last 4 or 5 years took one more giant pummeling, is because they want the transaction to finish in that spot in case there are issues or things come up. Um, these aren't my thoughts, by the way. I was talking with Kazra Dash, um, and he had an interesting idea. He's like, if you've got 10 links on a page and they all go to Amazon, or they all go to different products, isn't that really a doorway page? A doorway page, which is on the no-no list in the guidelines, says you rank for specific keywords, and then you funnel somebody somewhere else to make the sale, to finish the transaction. And that's exactly what affiliate sites are doing. And so you can see that helpful content, as one theory, is really a doorway page update. And that what you need to do, and the reason that brands and e-commerce got through that is because those aren't doorway pages. They can do the transaction. They're not funneled somewhere else to finish the experience. Um, and so as that, then really when you think about what can we do from an E perspective and what can we do for an H uh, helpful content update perspective, um, is kind of one and the same. Again, you need to get back to that idea of make yourself real. Make yourself a brand, make it so that there is a conversion that can happen on your site. And I think the more of that you can do, the more trust you're going to build, and the more likely you are to not just survive, but then thrive kind of in this new environment that Google has created.
That's HCU as it relates to an affiliate site. How about the segment of our audience and the segment of the world out there that would classify themselves as a content website, right? So I'll list off all the stereotypes, but like a site that's producing mostly informational content, comparison content, content that makes its money on advertisements, on a large amount of traffic, and monetizing through ads and maybe a couple of other measures. But would say I really don't make much money on affiliate sales. I don't send much traffic out of my website, and I still got creamed by the HCU.
But they all do, though. They all do send traffic out. They might be informational, but they all have affiliate links. Maybe there are some that don't have any, but I have yet to see, like, even ones that the vast majority might be display ads of their revenue. I don't doubt that, but I bet they have what would be under this definition as doorway pages all over their site. And I bet in their source code, uh, they've got more than one link out. Within, like, as those things are put in, like, they've got a whole bunch of links going out of their site continually. And so, again, I don't know that Google would say, like, oh, that's clearly an ad, so that's not an issue here. It's a link going out of your site.
Correct.
And
Yeah, it's a good distinction. An
all
ad
the
is still clickable, obviously, right?
yeah, and that's going somewhere else. Who is Google? Like, I don't know that Google could be like, okay, that's clearly an ad link, so I'm going to ignore that one. But this one is probably an affiliate link. But no, so you might be like, I only have one affiliate link on this page, but you've got 7 ads. Well, now you've got 8 links going out. And actually, when you look at the source code, there are a lot more than that, because you'll see multiple
Yeah. There's more than
links
if you
going
just
out
link to
per.
Amazon once.
Exactly, and there's more than just that one on that ad too. There are often multiple links as the code is generated, so that those 8 actually look like 30 in some situations, where it's just those things stack up all the time. It's just link after link after link is what this looks like, and they're all going out. And essentially, that's where the transaction will be completed anyway. Somebody is advertising, and okay, I read this thing, and Google probably feels pretty good about the content that it's giving you in terms of matching up, and like, okay, I'll go there to complete my transaction. And essentially, it's impossible to distinguish that ad traffic or those ad links from just affiliate links anyway.
God, that is such a good point that is so obvious. It's one of those things where you're like, well, duh, but I hadn't connected those dots until just now.
I can't take full credit for that. As I said, I was talking with Kasra, and he's like, "Aren't these doorway pages? What do you think?" And I was like, "Oh my God, I think you're right."
Yeah,
I usually deal with like doorway pages on like the local side more than anything, like where people like,
right.
you've got service and then city, you've got 10 of those, and they're essentially all the same page. Aren't those doorway pages? because essentially it's duplicate content. You're just changing out. You're just ranking for keywords to get that. And when I was like, well, no, they're not, because you can complete the transaction on that page. That plumber in all of those different cities that you're going after, neighborhoods, whatever they might be, you can convert, because then you call the plumber. You get the service, and so they're not doorway pages, and they're not violating any of the guidelines. And I didn't really kind of put that thought together until I spoke with him about, hey, essentially the transaction finishes off. You're funneling them somewhere else, and when you're funneling them somewhere else, that is a doorway page.
Why did UGC skyrocket so much in an HCU that is so dependent upon trust? What trust components do we get from a 10-year-old post on Reddit from some guy who has no expertise, and his experience that he or she is citing in their 10-year-old post can't be verified in any way, shape, or form?
I'll give you one better. A buddy of mine runs one of the largest travel websites that's independent, so like not part of Condé Nast and their conglomerate, for example. And he had this post about the top 50 things to do in Seattle. It was written by somebody who was born and raised in Seattle, and it had all of the things to do in Seattle, and it was an amazing post, and it ranked number 1 or number 2 for the longest time. He's now sitting, I think, at like 6 or 7 or 8 or something like that. And the one that took over is something like this, and the number 1 thing to do in Seattle apparently is meth on
I
this
know
list.
exactly who you're talking about. Yeah, I saw that.
And the number 2 one is a less savory thing to do than doing meth. So yeah, there have been some hiccups with the helpful content
The
update.
baby might have gotten thrown out with the bathwater on that one.
And that happens with updates. There are 2 things with updates. One is, again, they're not doing a value judgment, and I think that should hopefully is obvious for people. They're not, again, reading this and being like, oh, I understand this now. I have a better feeling for what this is. That's not it. It's whatever they tweaked in their algorithm. That's what's causing this to happen. The other thing, though, is let's say they do an update and there are 80 bad websites that they'd like to wipe out. Just as a number. Like, we want to do this update because we hate these 80 sites. And they do the update and they knock out 100. They got the 80, but then they also swept up 20. They were doing it right. They're okay with that carnage. They're very happy with that. Because the idea is, in their minds, we got rid of the 80. I'm sorry about those 20, but we got rid of the bigger problem. And that's how you see these updates, because all the time these updates are like, I don't understand why I got hit. I'm not doing any of these things. Because you can look at all the bad actor sites that got hit, and you can see like, okay, I understand why this is, but then why did these ones get hit as well? And that happens a lot. And I think from Google's mindset, when they roll these updates out, when they're trying to do something like that, get rid of some sites they hate, they will take out sites that are good. And it's just part of the equation, of the calculus of how they do this, and they're willing to accept those losses to get rid of those sites they don't like.
When it comes to the elephant in the room question that everyone's going to want me to ask, so I'll ask it. The affiliate site that got hit by the HCU, the content site that we now realize 5 minutes ago looks just like an affiliate site to Google that got hit by the HCU. All right. So what do we do? I'll throw a couple ideas out at you, because I sit in this community on a daily, weekly basis talking to people about this. Do we sit and wait and hope they change things in 2024 and beyond? Hopefully they understand they overreached. Hopefully they understand that maybe they can correct some of the sites that got negatively hit that maybe shouldn't have. Number 2, do we turn ourselves into an e-commerce brand and try to figure out how to take our articles and our content and our referrals and all that and turn it into a brand that sells things? Number 3, do we just say, oh my goodness, I just need to get myself more links to become more insulated to remove a helpful classifier, helpful content classifier that's on us? And I could rifle through 4 or 5 more, right, that we've kind of heard and have gained momentum and stuff. But I think a lot of people are trying to get some advice on tangible things that they can do as they sit in this circumstance for sites that have been hit by the HCU.
One of the problems here is I've not seen any recovery.
I know, yeah.
I've seen a couple of people mention recoveries, and I've yet to see anything with my own eyes, especially as to what they may or may not have done to get that recovery, which is really very frustrating. It's upsetting, especially, again, I think we're talking about the same friend, the same site. That site has done everything right. Like there's so much good on that site, and that is the content that is helpful, and it is excellent and well written and sourced, and they've done the right things. And then when I know they've identified some things they could do better, like especially with like maybe how many ads they had on the page and stuff like that. They've done all of that, and they've gone through and freshened up content, and they've gone through and taken this, that, and the other out, and they haven't seen any recovery. And I think because they are such a quality site, it doesn't give me a lot of hope for a fast return. Where they were doing everything as they were supposed to do before, they probably improved it, and that hasn't resulted in any recovery. And I haven't seen any widespread recovery from sites that have been hit. So what I would do is I would be thinking about how I can make money, and sitting around and hoping it is always a play, but I don't know that's going to do much. I don't think that's going to bring any money. So I would opt for option 2, and I would look at how to get e-commerce going or get something going that I can sell so that I can make money. I'd be doing it from a practical standpoint. If I don't know when this will revert, if it will revert, if there's anything that can be done, especially in the short term. So I'd be looking at how I can still use my site to make money, and that would be probably building out some sort of brand and building out some sort of e-commerce portion to the site, and that's what I would focus on.
Let me give you a scenario, real life one. I got an email about this a month or so ago. Gentleman emailed me, retired early, and turned into the neighborhood handyman. He always likes fixing things, repairing things. He likes building things. Ended up starting got into SEO, got into content, got into writing, started a website, got about 400 articles, was getting good traffic on various handyman topics, does it every day, has original pictures in there. They're not works of art, but they're pictures that clearly show he does it.
They're legitimate pictures, like pictures he's
Legitimate
taken.
pictures. Yeah, they're real
Yeah.
pictures. They're from his phone as he's
Right.
like underneath the house,
Yeah.
He's by all intents and purposes a handyman without a certification, without a business, without these things. And his site was tremendously hit by the HCU. Going back to what you just talked about, option 2, creating a brand, maybe play that example or that scenario out. What would you tell that person in that scenario? Because I think there's a lot of people listening who could then put their scenario or their situation into that example.
Yeah, for that, create the company. Like actually get a handyman business thing going, as much as he can, as much as he can possibly do. But then I would be getting those citations within the handyman listings. I'd have schema on there that I am a handyman business. I don't know if handyman's a specific schema, but there might be something pretty close that they could do to identify what type of entity this is, what type of company this is. And that's what I would do. I'd create a brand out of it. I'd create a company out of it as much as I can.
Get a Google business profile, get all those people you helped, all the neighbors that you helped with, tell them to go review your handyman business.
Absolutely what I would do. For sure. Like make yourself real, make yourself a brand, make yourself a company. And that's exactly what I would do in that situation.
You talked about links as a part of the HC or as a part of EEAT. Sorry, I'm leading with that question already. Terrible. You're not supposed to do that as a podcast host. You talked about how links.
Let me tell you the answer I want real quick, and then I'll get to the question.
I try not to do that, but I did it there. So, anyways, cat's out of the bag. You talked about links and how we didn't talk about them last time as it related to EAT. You did talk about how links are a part of EEAT, and let's talk about links as it relates to the HCU then. I mean, Spencer and I have talked on this podcast a lot about how it does seem that higher DR sites, right? Sites with a lot more links seem to be on a different playing field, or at least evaluated differently when it comes to the HCU by and large compared to sites with less links. So what's the role of links in all this with the HCU from what you can see?
Yeah, that's one of those things where you can't do one thing and neglect the other in SEO. You can't be like, I'm just going to build links and not worry about my content or what's on. I'm going to do only content. I'm not going to get any links. There has to be that balance between those two things. I still think you don't need a ton of links because, again, I don't really like to look at authority with DR. I like to look at authority with number of terms they're ranking for. And I think that is a better metric, but you can't really see that from the outside. You can't really see that through third-party tools very well. But what I think I'd be more interested in than getting high DR with links is I'd make sure that my site is growing in keywords. Sites that are growing, that are obtaining more and more keywords are healthy sites. That's an indicator that you're doing things very well, and Google likes you. Where I would start to be concerned is when that plateaus and starts to dip. You start losing keywords. That's where I think then you're losing your authority. The authority is going down. So I wouldn't necessarily clue in on DR, but that is a byproduct of the whole thing, right? But I would make sure that I've got a plan in place that I'm gaining keywords. I can see that through my own search console, and I'm tracking that. My pages are gaining keywords, the site is gaining keywords, and you can see that upward trend. What that also means is that you're going to be producing regular content. You can't just kind of set and forget on the content. And I think that also means you need to be very intentional with the content that you post. You can't really just post something for the sake of posting it. There needs to be a reason behind it. What are we trying to rank for with this term? Or what's this page going to support? Or how does it factor into, at the end of the day, us getting more keywords, which would then increase your authority? So I think the DR is a byproduct of that. I think a truer measure of authority is the amount of keywords you're ranking for. And if I were focusing, that's what I would focus on, rather than necessarily getting links just to move up my DR.
Yep. So chicken or the egg scenario there, but if you're, I see where you're going with it. Yeah, I see where you're going with that. This might seem like a little bit of an outlier, but as we bring this to a close, I wanted to make sure I got this question in because I do see it a lot. And like in the new HCU world that we live in, how important is frequently updating content? Because I think that people are satiated to the fact they need to be updating their content. They understand that there's a balance for the vast majority of websites between publishing new content and updating content. But I think there's a big gray area, back to charcoal gray, big gray area into how frequently do I need to be updating this? Like, I guess I'll just leave it at that.
So if I spent a lot of time on a page to try to get it to rank, I really dove in and I did all my on-page with my tools that I use for on-page, and I did content together, and I built out silos for this, or I've done my topic clusters, whatever you like to do, and I've got that all dialed in, and then I did some outreach for it. So I've got things going, and it's going well, right? So that type of page, you have to monitor that at least quarterly, because as a Google update happens, as new competitors come in, the goalpost will shift as to what you need to do. So you have to have some form of monitoring of that. And I think at quarterly is a minimum. But when you do see those tweaks, or when you do see those changes, you will have to tweak something a little bit. And when you do tweak, that'll give you a new modified date. That'll make the content fresh. You don't have to tweak more than one word for it to update. But I would imagine as you go through this process for your most important pages, I think at least quarterly you want to do that so that you are staying in line with what Google's rewarding. And then you're also, then as you do that, your page will be fresh. So I would do whatever you can do. I can make some suggestions. They're very self-promoting on that. But you want something like that in place. And that's how I would approach kind of that idea of how should we do this, or how should we keep these pages fresh? I would keep them fresh so that I'm in line with what Google is rewarding, not necessarily for the sake of the freshness.
Yeah. So you're saying almost like there might not be a tremendous amount that needs to get added from a necessity standpoint, but the fact that you need to continually show Google that you have at least checked the article, it can only be shown to them by updating the article.
That's right. Exactly right. Again, chicken and the egg. But it's like these need to be fresh, but they also need to be in line with what Google is rewarding. And that's where you see like that content rot happen, where like, hey, we're doing great, and you just kind of see this slow, death. But nothing was done to the page. It wasn't updated to where these terms need to be now. Things do shift a little bit. New entities might come into play, or slightly new content needs to be put in to hit different important terms. Then that gives you that freshness. So you're kind of maintaining what Google is rewarding, and then also showing Google that you're fresh, you're new.
Is there anything about the relationship to EEAT, to the HCU? Is there anything we didn't cover that you think is really important to close on?
No. The whole thing with EAT, going back to Medic all the way back, was to make yourself real. Like make yourself as real as you can, and make yourself as real as you can to a bot. And that hasn't changed. Now, what we understand that to be from Google's perspective, that has changed a little bit, and our knowledge has expanded on what perhaps they're looking for. But really, as I said before, the framework you need to have is, okay, there's my company's online. That company over there is a brick and mortar. What are they doing? What do they look like? And then look for things that are online to make yourself look like that as much as you can. And that's, I think, the right framework to think about these things. Make yourself real. Make yourself real that a bot can find that. That it's not that a human can look and be like, oh, this is a great website. I get it. This is all right. but that a bot can make that evaluation through the different signals that it can find. That's really the most important thing.
If I had to summarize the last hour, I would say be real and be a brand.
Yeah, yeah, and then get conversions on your site. Make it so that people can convert there.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever that might be.
Yeah.
But the more of that you can do, I think the better.
Well, Kyle, where are the places that people can go to learn more about the things you offer? Specifically, the courses you have. We talked about it last time, but we haven't given much time to that right now. Where can people go to learn more about that?
That's img.courses. All those fun new TLDs. Makes it so easy. I think it's like one of the last ones around. Yeah, we have img.courses. You can go in there. I actually have a brand new course that it's kind of like a little mini version of a few of my other courses in a like where to start with SEO. So if you're kind of like, I'm kind of new to this, or maybe I missed something, it's only I think like a 10-parter. So that's on there. That's fun. I think go to pageoptimizer.pro. That's my on-page tool. We have had an EAT tool, and we might be, I don't know if anybody else really does, but we've had an EAT tool for the last 4 years, 3.5, 4 years. And so we've been extensively studying the signals and the things that a bot can find. And so we do have that as well. And if I can get pitchy for a second, we do have a watchdog feature where if you've done the work, you click the watchdog and we monitor the SERPs for you. And when there are changes, there's been an update or new competitors come in, you get an email alert, hey, these things have happened and you might want to change these terms, you might want to add these terms. So that can help you kind of solve that question of how do we keep this fresh, or how do we monitor this, or how do we stay on top of these pages that we've taken the time to optimize. So I built that for me. It answered my question, solved my problem. But anyway, it's in the tool.
Now there's a podcast host doing a good job, because I got you a question without even realizing that you actually had something to address. How often do you need to update a page? There it is.
There it is. I solved it. But I solved it. I solved it for myself because it was a problem that I had. We've got, say, these clients. We've done 30 pages. We can't keep eyeballs on 30 pages. And you can monitor rankings, but that's not really the same thing. You will need to monitor rankings, but this monitors the actual SERPs. That, hey, there are 2 new competitors that have come in, and they seem to be doing pretty well, and they moved you down a spot. Kind of a thing. What do you need to do? Or looks like there's been an update. These new types of sites are showing up. What can you do? What can you do? Here are some things you can do, and that's what we needed for ourselves. And now it's in the tool.
Well, Kyle, another good one. I'll talk to Spence about which building we want to name after you, because I think
perfect. I'll just take a chair, something small.
Something small. Okay. Yeah, you're right. You got to hit 10 podcast episodes before you get a building. I think I shot too high there.
Yeah. That's too high. That's too
much. I'm not into. I don't do the building naming around these parts, so that's probably why.
Yeah.
Hey, thank you again. Always good to have you. Always good to see you. Everybody loves when you come on, and I'm sure this one will be no different. Until next time, appreciate it.
Yeah, I look forward to this. Like I said, this is my favorite. So thanks so much.
You're too kind. Thank you. Thanks for joining us today on the podcast. Just a final reminder that it was brought to you by Search Intelligence. And if you're looking for link building PR campaigns for your website, just head over to search-intelligence.co.uk and get in touch with them today. Cheers.
Hey everyone, thank you so much for listening to the Niche Pursuits podcast. I just wanted to remind you that if you are ready to start building smarter, faster, and easier internal links, you should check out Link Whisper. You can get $15 off Link Whisper when you use the coupon code PODCAST at checkout. Head over to linkwhisper.com and use the code PODCAST in order to save $15. Thanks again for listening.